They're creative, this generation. They want to be part of something. They want to be part of something in the real world. They want to create things, and they're creating their online personas every single day. If brands can't give them the tools to do that or the platforms to do it, they're the type of people that are going to go and invent them themselves.
This is the Brave Ideas Podcast, brought to you by Aqua, part of the Wonderman Network. Welcome to episode 30 of the Brave Ideas Podcast, the show that is all about bringing to light fresh perspectives from the worlds of digital and marketing. I'm Dan Herman. I'm a digital strategist. I'm making sick beats on musical.ly, and I was almost in a sushi coma last night. And today I'm here with my co-host.
I'm Esther McGeer, Head of Conversation Analytics at Aqua, and I make it my life's mission to annoy Dan Herman every single day.
Thanks, Esther. Today, we are really excited to have Kirsten Wiggill with us on the show. Kirsten is a social media account lead at Aqua. She's a cupcake baker who doesn't share, a small dog lover, and today she's going to talk to us about Generation Z. Kirsten, what's new?
Hello guys, firstly congratulations, show number 30, that's quite an achievement and a milestone, so well done on that. What's happening lately? I've been looking into this specimen people refer to as Generation Z, who they are, what they do, and why are they so intimidating to brands nowadays. So I've been spending a lot of time researching that, finding out what I can. I'm lucky enough to have a brother who falls into Gen Z, so he's been my test subject. And it's been really interesting.
Kirsten, to start off with, there are so many buzzwords about the different generations and millennials and Gen Z, and what is the difference? Who are they? Where do they fall in?
So Generation Z, you could easily describe them as they were born in the late 1990s or early 2000s. So they are the people that are between, let's say, 14 to 20 years old. They are the generation that came after the millennials. So the millennials are the people between 35 and about 20. Before that would be like the baby boomers or the Generation Ys. So Generation Z are the teens of today, basically.
What makes Generation Z special?
I think what makes them so special is people have incorrect opinions or an incorrect perspective of what they actually are. We think of them as selfie-obsessed teens who hang out at the malls, add filters to all their selfies to Photoshop their photos. They actually don't. They're quite a mature generation, and in a lot of the research that I did and articles that I read, they are compared with the silent generation, which is quite strange because the silent generation would be their grandparents or even at sometimes their great-grandparents. And because of their maturity and their independence and their ambition to be great and to be entrepreneurs in their own way, they are actually quite different to what people think they are.
Can you explain a bit more about what the silent generation is?
So the silent generation were people that were born around the 1920s, and they would be the grandparents or the great-grandparents in some cases of Generation Z. They were very similar to Gen Z in that they were mature. They experienced a lot in the world, what was happening. So the wars were on. They were very driven towards being successful and achieving in life. And strangely enough, Generation Z are very similar to that. They've also experienced things that have happened in the world. They were around for 9/11. They've been around for all the mass school shootings. They've been around for the terrorism attacks. So their outlook on life is quite different because they've grown up experiencing all these things that have been going on in the world.
You know, I'd already love this idea that there's a new generation emerging, and I think, in my opinion, brands have been quite slow to recognize that there is a new generation emerging and that Gen Z cannot be and should not be conflated with millennials. You know, what fascinates me also is this fact that, millennials, we grew up in a world where technology was evolving, where we all remember growing up without a cell phone. And then the shift that happened when mobile devices became completely ubiquitous and what that meant for us. But we always remember how we got around when we didn't have this and that. I mean, this generation are totally digital natives. I mean, they've grown up surrounded by technology the entire time. What are the implications for that in terms of how they engage with technology?
So, Dan, that is true. They are the real first digital natives. They grew up with technology. So, since young ages, they've been consuming content on phones, on tablets, on TV screens, on computers. They weren't like us, where when we wanted to find an answer when we were younger, we had the Britannica series of encyclopedias, and your mom would say to you,
Britannica's for losers. World Book is the best.
I remember asking questions about things or doing school assignments and having to actually go to the bookcase and pull out the encyclopedias and look for the answers and get the answers from those books. Whereas nowadays, Gen Z, they've grown up with technology. They are tech savvy from a very, very young age, and they have constant and immediate access to this information. If they need an answer, they just Google it. If they aren't sure of something that's happening in school, they just SMS a friend. So they really do need that immediate and constant feedback. They can't wait for things because they have the tools to gather the information that they need when they need it.
This is really interesting to me because the booms and the peaks in interest on digital always happened like in waves. So for instance, like you were saying, we were the first to really, in terms of the millennials, I guess, were the first to be exposed to social media. And I actually remember when Facebook came out in school, it was like, whoa. And then the next social media platform came out and it was like, whoa, we all got to get onto it. So Twitter. And then the next one, Instagram, we all got to get onto it. What's great about the fact that Gen Z is coming up is that these have all been available to them. And now they actually get to choose where they'd like to be in terms of the experience they'd like to have. Perhaps you have some insight into where they are situated or how they make those choices today.
Definitely. So like you said, they don't get excited by new tech or social developments. They've grown up with everything. So they have a choice. They can choose where they want to be active and where they want to communicate. And I think a key insight around that is from a recent study, over 75% of teens nowadays have mobile phones and are constantly connected. So they can choose what they want to do. They can choose when they want to surf the net or which platforms they want to be involved in. And it's very interesting that email, they don't get email, so don't try and email them. Email, they don't know how to do it.
It's too slow.
They don't know how to do email. And if they do email, they will approach it like they do a WhatsApp message or a text message. Facebook to them is dead. They feel Facebook is now for the older millennials like us or their parents.
Stalking parents. That's where you find
Yes. They are moving more towards platforms where they can consume and create real content. So real content that tells true stories. It's not edited. It's not photoshopped. It actually gives them a real view on the world and people in the world so they can learn more about their surroundings and other people that they don't grow up with. So things like Snapchat, for example, they will snap away real photos and they're happy that those photos disappear and there's no record of them. One of the key characteristics of Gen Z is that they're actually quite conservative and private. It's quite strange because we consider them to be these selfie-obsessed people, but they actually aren't. They are very conscious of the brand that they're building for themselves online. So the fact that Snapchat will delete their pictures after a certain amount of time suits them just fine. Another platform is YouTube or Periscope. That also gives them the opportunity to engage and create and consume real content that tells a story about the world, and it's not fake, made-up content that's been edited.
But it's not simply about choice, and I don't think we're going far enough to explain the impact that Gen Z are having, because it's not that they're simply choosing the platforms that they want to communicate on, it's that they're redefining and reimagining communication in its entirety.
Sure.
The way that they communicate is to tell stories through combinations of different types of mediums, whether that's images, text, photos. I mean, the power of Snapchat is that you can jump from an emoji to a video to to filters in the blink of an eye, to a facial recognition software. It just gives them that variety, and that's what they are looking for, and that's what they need. The whole way of communication is changing, and I think that that's what we're struggling with as brands and as marketers, is that we are going to have to completely shift the way that we advertise, the way that we communicate, adjust to a new form of language that is emerging. It's no surprise that an emoji was one of the biggest, most used words in the last year. It's because that's becoming language today. Things are shifting, and we need to understand the way that people communicate in order for us to get that shift. In addition to that, like another thing that's horrifying for brands, I think, is the fact that it's taken ADD to a new level. Like, we thought that, back in the day, kids who used to watch TV non-stop and couldn't concentrate had ADD. Today, Generation Z have a limited threshold of the amount of time that they can consume any information, which is why short form and snaps, which are 10 seconds short, maybe even 3 seconds, is becoming the modus operandi. So it offers a major challenge to brands in terms of what they need to do to adapt. And I'd be quite interested to get your perspective, Kirsten, on what is it that brands need to do in order to adapt to the way that communication is changing.
Definitely, Dan, and I think you've highlighted something there that's really important. They don't want to consume long content. They want content that is short, quick, easy to read, and they can move on to the next thing. So I think something that brands really need to take into account is, what is that message and what do you want them to get after you've run a campaign or you've launched a new product or whatever it is? Make sure that whatever that information is, it's short and it's simple and it's quick for them to consume, and don't focus on one platform. Like you said, they have a variety of platforms to choose from. They aren't loyal to one. They use all of them. So whatever campaign or message you want to get across, make sure you're doing it across platforms. Don't just focus on one platform. And the message needs to be as short as possible. Like I said, they don't do email. They don't write emails. And if they do, they write it in, let's say, 140 characters or less. That is how they are consuming content. So that's what we need to keep in mind. Gone are the days where we create videos that are 5 minutes long, or we write articles that are paragraphs and paragraphs. They're not going to consume that content. They want to consume content that is quick, and they can move on to the next thing.
I'd like to disagree with you guys for a second and say that it's not...
You try.
Disagreeing with the strategist. It's not an attention span thing. It's just that they're very clear about what interests them and are happy to move on very quickly in terms of, this interests me, but I have got other choices. So it's not that I can't keep attention, Dan. It's just that I just like to stand up for the Gen Z guy.
And I think I'm going to agree with you, actually. I am going to agree with you. I don't think it's an attention span thing. I must agree with Esther. It is the fact that they know that they're independent. They're confident. They know what they want.
Exactly.
And if you as a brand are not giving them what they want, they're going to move on to the next thing. Another thing is, they aren't brand loyal. So they are looking for the best value and quality at the lowest price. Sure. They're very conscious of financial stability. So they're not going to go for the big brand names or the labels. They want something that's of value.
Speaking of brands, Dan, I'm not going to give you a chance to come back on this.
Why? No, I deserve a right of response.
I think we outrule you.
Oh, snap! Things just got real.
Can I just say, I will say what I need to say. I will say what I need.
Okay, of course you will.
Okay, thank you, Esther. So basically, I agree with you guys. But I don't think that it exists in isolation. I don't think you can safely say that it's just because of choice that's the power that they've got. It's a combination of different trends. We've spoken of content shock. There is so much information that exists in the world. I mean, you spoke earlier about how we used to use encyclopedias. They have information on demand, and they're surrounded by it all the time. They are multi-screened. They change screens 27 times a day. They do what they need to do in the way that they want it. But because of that there is a net effect around how they are able to engage with and what they take in. And actually, if your message isn't succinct enough or put in the language in the way that they can understand with, and yes, it is a combination of attention deficit disorder and choice. But at the end of the day, you've got to understand that there are multiple trends that are driving the way that Gen Z engage and interact. Not simply, it's definitely very nuanced, and it's definitely not black and white, and I think it would be remiss to suggest that it is.
Okay, so I'd like to go on and ask 2 questions of you, Kirsten.
Okay.
The first one would be, in light of that, and in light of who we actually advertising, and that it really is that teen sector, should every brand or would every brand have a desire to plug into that generation? And then dual to that, who are the brands currently that are plugging in, but are plugging in the right way?
So I think brands have a choice whether they should be marketing to teens or not. I think it depends on what they offer and what their product is. Is it going to be relevant to somebody who's 15, 14 years old? Not all brands need to scramble and change their business objectives and their marketing campaigns to make sure that teens are going to like them. And unfortunately, these teens are making brands feel very insecure at the moment because they're not sure. They've only just kind of caught on to how to market to millennials, and now they have to completely change the way they're doing things to accommodate Gen Z. So I think brands need to consider what sort of product they have, what they offer, and is that going to be relevant for this generation? And if it is, how are they going to actually get their message and their product across to this generation? They're creative, this generation. They want to be part of something. They want to be part of something in the real world. They want to create things, and they're creating their online personas every single day. And if brands can't give them the tools to do that or the platforms to do it, they're the type of people that are going to go and invent them themselves, pretty much. So I think once a brand has decided that their product may be relevant to Gen Z, it's looking at things like that and looking at how you can change the way you've been doing things to accommodate this new generation. One of the campaigns that actually comes to mind is the HP Bend the Rules campaign, where they filmed a music video with Meghan Trainor. So that whole campaign was marketed at Generation Z, and it was all about giving them different platforms and instructions to create content on these platforms that would in turn feed back into HP and help them launch this Bend the Rules campaign. And if you do want to find out more information, it's simply #Bend the Rules and everything will come up. You'll see all the content that was created. You'll see the music video that they did. Excuse me. So I think that's a really good example of a brand that went out with a product that they wanted to target at Gen Z, and they changed the way they did things in order to connect with that generation.
So I'd just like to say that it's not simply about brands considering whether they might adjust their products to Gen Z. It is going to become an imperative for brands to seek ways to adjust entire business models and modes of communication in order to meet the need of Gen Z. So I'd be quite interested to get any insight in terms of what we're doing here at Aqua in order to start to meet this need.
So I think to start off with, something that we may be doing in the social media team at the moment is we are looking at the platforms. We're looking at whether Facebook is actually relevant for certain messages. We're looking at ways to use Periscope more. We're looking at how Snapchat can be used by our brands. What can we do with Snapchat? I don't think we've tapped into that platform enough with the brands that we work on. So what can we do with those platforms to get our brand's message across? If there is a campaign that is targeted at a younger generation, we are looking at the fact that LinkedIn is not that platform. You're not going to achieve what you want to through a platform like that. So that's one of the first things that we are doing, is we really are considering the platforms that we use and also the message and the way we talk on those platforms. One example is a group of the community managers here at Aqua completely understand this new term called Black Twitter. They get it. They can communicate with people on Black Twitter. They can have conversations. And that is something that we have to learn as well. And a lot of the people that are contributing to Black Twitter are probably within the Generation Z. So it's about adapting the way you talk to people as well. Generation Z want humans. They want personal interaction. They don't want those automated emails with the same message. So I think that's another thing that we are considering, and we have actually started doing, is communicating on a more personal level with these people and with the target audience.
Kirsten, leading on from that, from in terms of what we're doing here at Aqua, for the broader network and for our listeners that are tuning in at the moment, what would you like to leave with them in terms of a final thought on this?
I think my final thought would be, Brands need to stop being scared. They need to be brave and they need to be bold. Generation Z is that. They're very brave, they're very independent, and they're very bold. They want to make a difference in the world. They want to make a change. And if brands can give them the opportunity to do that, or the platforms to do that, they need to work together on it. So give them the opportunity to do that. They want to make a change and they want to be real. And what can brands do to allow them to do that? So I think it really is about be brave and be bold and run with them. Do what they're doing.
Kirsten, if people want to find out more about this topic or more about you, what do they need to do?
They could either email me at kirstenw@aquaonline.com, or I am also on Twitter, and my Twitter handle is Kirst_Lee, and it's LEIGH.
Thanks, Kirst, and thank you for listening to the Brave Ideas podcast. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube, and while you're there, give us a rating and a review.
For more awesome content from this show and others, please visit the Brave Ideas blog, which you can find at aquaonline.com/Brave Ideas podcast. Also, if you want to get involved in the conversation, please follow @AquaBraveIdeas on Twitter or Brave Ideas Podcast on Instagram.
If you want to keep in touch with me, Dan, you can connect with me at elhermo, ELHERMO on Twitter, and elhermo23 on Snapchat. I'm there because I'm cool, like a Gen Z, and Instagram. And you can get in touch with Esther.
Dan is not that cool. And my email address is estherm@aquaonline.com.
Special thank you to Kirsten Wiggill, our guest. Thanks to Matt Klevansky for engineering and production, and thanks to Matt and Isaac Klevansky for the music. Thanks to Johan Buerter for the art direction, and thank you to our distribution team, Magesha Sami, Kirsten Wiggill, Helen Semenis, and Sabella Canida.
That brings us to the end of the show. We'll leave you with one final thought. There are no original ideas, only original people.